The dog's paws were bleeding when they found him 3 days later, scratched raw from clawing at solid rock. Coda sat motionless outside a cave entrance barely wide enough for a person to crawl through, his golden retriever coat matted with mud and something else the search team couldn't identify. His owners, Ezra Chen and Delphine Moreau, had vanished into the Blackstone cave system in Oregon's Cascade Wilderness on October 15, 2021. Coda weighed 68 pounds when they started their hike. When forest rangers discovered him, he weighed 43 pounds and wouldn't stop shaking. 3 months earlier, Ezra and Delphine had been planning their wedding in Portland, arguing about centerpieces and guest lists like any normal couple. Ezra worked as a software engineer at Nike, debugging code 60 hours a week while Delphine taught high school French and dreamed of traveling through Europe. They hiked every weekend to escape their ordinary lives, always bringing Coda, always staying on marked trails. The Blackstone cave system wasn't marked on any official map. Ezra found it mentioned in a single forum post from 2019, buried in a thread about hidden gems in the Cascades. Why would two experienced hikers abandon their careful routine to crawl into an unmapped cave system with their dog? The answer was scratched into the cave wall in Delphine's handwriting, found 18 inches from where her torn hiking boot lay in the darkness. "We shouldn't have come here." The couple left Portland at sunrise on Friday morning, October 5th. Delphine posted a photo on Instagram at 7:23 a.m. showing their packed Subaru Outback, captioned "Weekend Warriors Ready for Adventure." The GPS in their car showed they drove 127 miles east into the Mount Hood National Forest, then stopped at coordinates that led to nothing but Forest Service Road 2646, a dirt logging trail that dead-ended into wilderness. Their cell phones lost. Signal at 11:47 a.m. The last text message on Ezra's phone, sent to his brother, Reed, found something crazy. Going dark for the weekend. Forest Service records show no permits issued for that area. Local rangers had never heard of the Blackstone Caves, but when search teams arrived at the coordinates from the couple's GPS, they found more than just an abandoned car. 23 feet from where the Subaru was parked, spray-painted on a Douglas fir tree in faded red letters, someone had written, "Blackstone system, enter at your own risk. No rescue possible." The paint was old, maybe 5 years, and had been partially covered by new bark growth. Someone had known about this place long before Ezra found that forum post. Their car contained everything you'd expect from weekend hikers preparing for 2 days in the wilderness. 2 sleeping bags, rated for temperatures down to 20 degrees, a camp stove, and enough food for 4 days. Headlamps with fresh batteries, rope, carabiners, and basic spelunking gear that Ezra had ordered from Ray just 2 weeks earlier. But missing from their carefully packed supplies was the emergency beacon that Delphine's father had given them for Christmas, a device that could send distress signals even without cell coverage. They had left it sitting on their kitchen counter in Portland. The trail from their car led downhill through old-growth forest for exactly 1.2 miles. Search teams followed broken branches and boot prints in the soft earth until the tracks stopped at a limestone outcropping that rose like a wall from the forest floor. The cave entrance was hidden behind a curtain of hanging moss and blackberry vines, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. The opening measured 18 inches wide and 32 inches tall. To enter, you had to crawl on your hands and knees through total darkness. That's where they found Coda on Monday morning, October 18th. The dog had worn his claws down to the quick scratching at the rock around the cave entrance. His water bowl, a collapsible silicone dish that Delphine always packed for their hikes, sat empty beside him. But the strange thing wasn't that the dog had survived 3 days without food or water. The strange thing was that something had been feeding him. Fresh salmon bones lay scattered around his makeshift shelter, cleaned of all meat. Pacific salmon don't spawn in those mountains in October. The nearest salmon run was 60 miles away. Deputy Sheriff Marcus Webb led the first rescue team into the cave system. Webb had 22 years of experience in wilderness rescue, including cave operations, but nothing had prepared him for what they found beyond that narrow entrance. The cave opened into a corridor 8 feet wide and 12 feet tall, carved from limestone by water that had been gone for thousands of years. The walls were smooth, almost polished, and covered in strange markings that Webb initially thought were natural rock formations. But when he aimed his flashlight directly at them, the patterns looked deliberate, purposeful, like symbols carved by human hands. The rescue team followed the main corridor for 200 feet before it branched into 3 separate passages. Each passage sloped downward at different angles, disappearing into absolute darkness that their lead flashlights couldn't penetrate. The temperature inside the cave held steady at 47 degrees, cold enough to see your breath but not cold enough to cause immediate hypothermia. But the air felt wrong, too thick, too still. Webb described it later as breathing inside a sealed tomb. They found Delphine's hiking boot in the left passage, 300 feet from the entrance. The boot had been torn apart, not cut or damaged by sharp rocks, but shredded as if something with claws had grabbed it and pulled. The leather was still soft, not stiff from moisture or cold, which meant it had been removed recently, but there was no blood on the boot or on the cave floor around it. No signs of struggle, just clean-picked leather and a bootlace that had been bitten through. Ezra's broken iPhone lay in the center passage 450 feet underground. The screen was completely shattered, but the phone's internal memory was intact. The last photo on the device, taken at 2:17 p.m. on Friday, showed Delphine's face illuminated by flashlight beam, her expression serious and frightened. Behind her, barely visible in the darkness, something else reflected the camera flash. Something that might have been eyes, or might have been wet rock. The phone's battery had died sometime Saturday morning, but the GPS tracker showed they had traveled nearly a mile underground before the signal cut out. The message scratched into the cave wall was found in the right passage, carved into soft limestone 600 feet from the entrance. "We shouldn't have come here," was written in block letters, each word about 6 inches tall. Below it, in smaller text, someone had carved a date, October 16th, 21. October 16th, 2021, Saturday, the day after they entered the cave. The letters were fresh, carved with something sharp enough to cut stone but small enough to control precisely. Something like the folding knife that Ezra always carried on their hikes. The knife that was missing from his backpack when search teams found it abandoned in the same passage. But carved messages and missing equipment weren't the strangest discoveries in the Blackstone system. 20 feet past Delphine's message, the passage opened into a circular chamber roughly 30 feet across. The walls of this chamber were covered in the same symbols they had seen near the entrance, but these markings were older, weathered by centuries of slow water damage. And in the center of the chamber, arranged in a perfect circle, someone had placed 17 animal skulls: deer, elk, bears, and smaller animals the search team couldn't identify. Each skull faced inward toward the chamber's center, where the remains of a fire pit held charcoal that carbon dating later showed was between 800 and 1200 years old. The fire pit contained more than ancient charcoal. Mixed in with the burned wood were fragments of fabric, synthetic materials that hadn't existed 800 years ago, modern hiking gear, a piece of nylon that matched the color of Ezra's jacket, a small metal button from Delphine's cargo pants, and underneath everything, pressed into the hard-packed earth, a single human tooth, a molar with a gold filling that dental records would later confirm belonged to a hiker named Patricia Vance, who had disappeared in the same area in 1998. Teams spent 4 days mapping every passage in the Blackstone cave system. They found 3 more chambers, each one deeper and stranger than the last. They found camping gear from multiple time periods spanning at least 40 years. They found photographs of people who were never identified, pictures that had been arranged carefully in small shrines built into natural alcoves in the cave walls. They found journals written in different languages, including entries in English, Spanish, French, and something that linguists at Portland State University couldn't identify. But they never found Ezra Chen or Delphine Moreau. The strangest discovery came on the 4th day of searching, in the deepest chamber they could access. The passage leading to this final room was so narrow that rescue workers had to crawl single file for 200 feet, following a trail of deliberately placed reflective markers that someone had attached to the cave walls years earlier. The chamber itself was enormous, cathedral-sized, with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness beyond their flashlight beams, and covering every surface of this vast underground space. Carved into the walls from floor to ceiling were thousands of names. Some names were carved in block letters, like Delphine's message. Others were scratched hastily, desperately, as if the person writing them was running out of time. The oldest names, weathered almost smooth by centuries of moisture, were carved near the chamber floor. The newest names were still sharp and clear, carved into the highest reaches of the walls where someone would have needed climbing gear to reach them. The search team counted 2,847 names before they stopped counting. At the very top of the chamber, carved into limestone 12 feet above the cave floor, they found 2 fresh names that made Deputy Webb order his team to evacuate immediately: Ezra Chen and Delphine Moreau, carved in the same block letters as the message they had found days earlier. The Forest Service sealed the Blackstone Cave system on October 25, 2021. Official reports cited geological instability and public safety concerns, but the real reason was written in Deputy Webb's confidential report to the county sheriff. Whatever happened to those people is still happening in there. The cave entrance was filled with concrete and marked with warning signs in English and Spanish. Forest Service rangers patrol the area twice weekly, but they're not looking for lost hikers anymore. They're making sure the concrete barrier remains intact. Coda recovered from his ordeal and was adopted by Delphine's sister in Seattle. The dog never fully regained his original personality. He refuses to enter any enclosed space, even houses or cars, and becomes violently agitated at the smell of limestone or the sound of running water. Veterinarians found no physical explanation for his behavioral changes, but they did find something unusual in his blood work: traces of sedatives that aren't used in veterinary medicine, chemicals that are found in certain plants that grow only in underground environments, plants that have never been identified in Oregon's cave systems. The forum post that led Ezra to the Blackstone Caves was deleted sometime between October 18th and October 22nd, 2021. The user who posted it, Cascade Explorer _1972, had no other activity on the forum and used an email address that doesn't exist. But computer forensics specialists at the FBI were able to recover the deleted post from cached files. The complete message read, "Hidden cave system east of government camp. Multiple chambers, old symbols. Amazing acoustics. Bring your dog. They can sense things humans can't. GPS coordinates 45.37 to 1N, 121.5842W. Best accessed through Old Logging Road, 2646. Park where the road ends and hike downhill. Look for the hanging moss. You'll know it when you see it." The post had been viewed 1,847 times before it was deleted. Forest Service investigators tried to contact other forum users who had accessed the post, but they discovered something that ended the investigation permanently. Every single person who had viewed that forum post had been reported missing in the Mount Hood National Forest between 2019 and 2021. 47 people, all experienced hikers, all disappeared without a trace. The GPS coordinates from the forum post don't match the location where search teams found Ezra and Delphine's car. The coordinates in the post point to a location 15 miles north, where Forest Service maps show no roads, no trails, and no cave systems. When investigators reached those coordinates using helicopter transport, they found nothing but pristine wilderness, no caves, no limestone formations, no signs that humans had ever been in that area. But they did find 17 graves, arranged in a perfect circle, each one marked with a river stone that had been carved with symbols matching the ones found in the Blackstone cave system. The graves were old, maybe 200 years old, but they had been maintained recently. Fresh flowers, native to the area, had been placed on each grave within the last month. The flowers were Pacific Trillium, a plant that blooms only in April and May. The investigators reached the site in late October. Someone had been bringing fresh spring flowers to 200-year-old graves in the middle of autumn. In a location that required helicopter access to reach, ground-penetrating radar confirmed that each grave contained human remains. But the county coroner refused to authorize excavation after the initial scans revealed something impossible. The radar showed bodies in each grave, but the images suggested the remains were arranged in poses that human bodies can't achieve naturally, poses that would require joints to bend in directions that human anatomy doesn't allow. The coroner's report, classified and sealed by county order, concluded that further investigation would pose significant risk to personnel's psychological well-being. 3 months after Ezra and Delphine disappeared, their wedding venue in Portland received a call from someone claiming to be Delphine Moreau. The caller asked to confirm the date and time of their ceremony, scheduled for December 18, 2021. When the venue coordinator explained that the wedding had been cancelled due to the bride and groom's disappearance, the caller laughed and said, "We haven't disappeared. We're exactly where we're supposed to be." The call lasted 47 seconds and came from a phone number that doesn't exist in any telecommunications database. The voice on the recording, analyzed by audio forensics specialists, matched Delphine's speech patterns and vocal characteristics perfectly. The Mount Hood National Forest receives approximately 200 missing person reports every year. Since the Blackstone cave system was sealed in October 2021, that number has dropped to fewer than 12 annual reports. But those 12 cases share characteristics that make Forest Service rangers refuse to discuss them publicly. Every missing person since October 2021 has been found within 48 hours, discovered in locations they couldn't possibly have reached on their own, found standing perfectly still in forest clearings, facing the same direction, completely unharmed but with no memory of how they got there. When asked about their experience, each person gives the same response. I'm supposed to wait there until someone found me. Search and rescue teams no longer operate in the area around the sealed cave system. Official policy states that the region is temporarily inaccessible due to ongoing geological survey work, but the real reason is written in internal Forest Service memos that won't be declassified for 50 years. The area is monitored by motion-activated trail cameras placed every quarter mile in a grid pattern extending 5 miles from the sealed cave entrance. Those cameras capture thousands of images every month, but they only record animals and empty forest, except on nights when the moon is dark. On those nights, the cameras record the same image repeatedly. 2 figures walking hand in hand through the forest, heading toward the sealed cave entrance. The figures appear in perfect detail, clearly recognizable as Ezra Chen and Delphine Moreau, but their images cast no shadows and leave no footprints in the soft forest earth. The cameras have recorded this same scene 17 times since October 2021. Each time, the figures reach the concrete barrier that seals the cave entrance, stand motionless for exactly 23 minutes, then turn and walk back into the forest. The final image in each sequence shows them stopping to wave at the camera before disappearing into darkness that digital sensors can't penetrate. In every photograph, Ezra and Delphine look exactly as they did on the day they vanished. They haven't aged, they haven't changed, and they're always smiling.